Ma'am, can you hear me? Breathe, there you go. Nice and slow.
The air was heavy with the sweet scent of peaches. The orchard stretched wide under the Alabama sun, golden fruit hanging low from branches that bent with summer's bounty. Jade wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, pausing only for a moment before lifting another basket. She was used to working hard. Her life had been nothing but early mornings and long hours. But there was a peace to the orchard that kept her grounded. Suddenly, the screech of tires tore through the stillness. Birds scattered. Jade's head snapped up just in time to hear the sickening thud of metal against wood. Her heart leapt. Dropping the basket, she sprinted toward the road that ran along the edge of the orchard. There, half hidden by dust and broken branches, was a sleek black sedan crumpled against an old oak. Inside, an older woman with silver strands of hair struggled desperately for breath. Her face was pale, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Panic filled her eyes as her trembling hands clawed weakly at the air. Jade's instincts kicked in. She yanked the car door open and leaned in. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The woman tried to speak, but no words came, only wheezing, sharp and thin. Jade spotted a handbag on the passenger seat. She dug frantically through it until her fingers closed around a small plastic inhaler. Relief rushed through her. She pressed it gently to the woman's lips. "Breathe, there you go. Nice and slow." After 2 desperate puffs, the woman's chest eased ever so slightly. But she was still too weak. Jade's pulse raced. There wasn't time to wait for an ambulance. Not on this lonely stretch of road. "Hang on. I've got you." With surprising strength, Jade pulled the woman from the wreck and guided her toward her old pickup truck. She laid her across the seat, climbed in, and started the engine. The truck roared to life, tires spitting gravel as she sped down the country road toward the nearest hospital. The woman's hand weakly clutched Jade's arm. Her voice was faint but filled with urgency. "Please call my son." Jade nodded quickly. "We'll get you to safety first." Minutes later, the hospital's sliding doors burst open as Jade rushed inside with the woman in her arms. Nurses swarmed, wheeling her away. Jade followed only long enough to see her taken into care before collapsing against a wall, her chest heaving. She had no idea her life had just changed forever, because at that very moment, a call was being placed to Montgomery, to a man named Hayun, a billionaire CEO whose world was about to collide with hers. The sterile white walls of the hospital corridor seemed to close in on him. Hayun's heart hammered against his ribs as he rushed through the entrance, his driver barely keeping up. He had left a meeting in Montgomery the moment his assistant relayed the call. "Sir, your mother has been in an accident." The words hadn't stopped ringing in his ears. His father's death had come suddenly, a cruel cut that left him scarred. The idea of losing his mother the same way, here in a foreign country, was unbearable. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice sharp, urgent. The nurse pointed him toward the emergency ward. He was halfway down the hall when he noticed her. A young woman sat on the hard plastic bench, her clothes stained with dust, her braids damp with sweat. Her hands still shook faintly, though her eyes were alert and watchful, locked on the double doors where his mother had been taken. "Jade." She rose as he approached, standing tall though exhaustion pulled at her frame. "You're her son?" she asked softly. "Yes," Hayun said, his breath uneven. "How is she? Were you the one?" "I found her on the road," Jade explained. Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that grounded chaos. "She couldn't breathe. I used her inhaler and brought her here. They're taking care of her now." For a moment, Hayun couldn't speak. Relief surged through him, so sharp it almost hurt. His throat tightened as he turned his gaze to the closed doors, then back to Jade. "You saved her life." Jade shook her head quickly. "I just did what anyone would do." But Hayun's world didn't work that way. In his world, people looked after themselves first. Favors came with a price. Gratitude was currency. Yet here was this young woman, standing before him with nothing but sincerity in her eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "Please, allow me to thank you properly. Anything you want, Money, support, whatever you need. Just name it. Jade blinked at him, then let out a soft, almost amused laugh. You don't have to do that. Really. I don't want your money. I'm just glad she's safe. Her refusal disarmed him completely. He stared at her, caught off guard, as if she had spoken in a language he no longer understood. At that moment, the doors swung open, and a doctor stepped out. She's stable now. You can see her. Hayun released a shaky breath and started forward, but then paused, turning back to Jade. For reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't want her to disappear. Please, he said, softer this time, almost a plea. Come with me. She should see the face of the one who helped her. Jade hesitated, her eyes flicking to the doors. Then slowly she nodded. And so they walked together. Two strangers bound by an accident neither of them could have predicted. Toward the hospital room where a new chapter of their lives was quietly waiting to begin. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor filled the hospital room, soft and reassuring. Madame Kim lay propped against crisp white pillows, her breathing easier now, though her skin was still pale. The accident had shaken her, but her spirit, strong and dignified, was unbroken. When the door opened, her son entered first. Hayun's shoulders, tense with worry, finally eased as his eyes fell on her. Mother, he whispered, stepping quickly to her side and taking her hand. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You came, she breathed, her Korean accent thick but gentle. I came the moment I heard, he replied, voice rough with emotion. But before he could say more, Madame Kim's eyes shifted. Behind him, Jade lingered at the doorway, uncertain if she truly belonged in such a scene. Is that her? Madame Kim asked, her gaze warming. Hayun turned and nodded. Yes, mother. This is the young woman who saved you. Jade stepped forward, her movements hesitant. Hello, ma'am. I'm just glad I was there when you needed help. Madame Kim studied her for a long moment. There was something in Jade's presence, an honesty, a gentleness, that touched her deeply. Slowly, she reached out her hand. Come closer. Jade approached and took her hand. It was cool but firm, surprisingly steady for someone who had nearly collapsed hours ago. You are brave, Madame Kim said softly. I owe you my life. Jade flushed, shaking her head. Please don't say that. Anyone would have done the same. But Madame Kim's eyes sparkled with quiet wisdom. Not everyone would. You did. Hayun watched the exchange in silence. His mother was not quick to offer her trust, not since his father's passing. Yet here she was, clasping Jade's hand as if they had known each other longer than a single day. Something stirred inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. Tell me your name, Madame Kim asked. Jade, she answered softly. Jade Williams. Jade, Madame Kim repeated, rolling the syllables with care, as though committing them to memory. A precious stone. It suits you. Jade smiled, a little shy under the weight of such kindness. For the next few minutes they spoke gently, about the accident, about Jade finding the inhaler, about the orchard where she worked. Madame Kim listened intently, as if each detail mattered. And all the while, Hayun stood nearby, torn between gratitude, curiosity, and an unfamiliar pull toward this woman who had entered his life so suddenly. At last, Madame Kim's eyelids began to droop with fatigue. She gave Jade's hand a final squeeze. Stay near, child. I want to see you again when I am stronger. Jade hesitated but nodded. Of course, ma'am. As Jade slipped quietly from the room, Hayun followed her into the hall. For a long moment, he simply watched her, the fluorescent lights casting a halo around her braids. You've given me back my mother, he said, his voice low. I don't know how to thank you, but I would like to try. Jade glanced at him, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Start by not offering me money again. He chuckled, an unexpected, genuine laugh that softened his usually sharp features. And in that small, fleeting moment, both of them knew. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. The sun was just beginning to dip, painting the Alabama sky in strokes of pink and orange. Jade balanced a basket of peaches on her hip, moving carefully down the orchard row. The day had been long, her arms sore, but she found comfort in the rhythm of work. The orchard was her place of peace, simple, steady, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. Or so she thought. The distant rumble of an engine broke the quiet. It wasn't the sound of an old pickup or a farm truck. This was smoother, heavier. When she glanced toward the dirt road that wound past the orchard, she froze. A sleek black car, foreign, polished, completely out of place, was rolling to a stop. The door opened, and out stepped Hayun. His tailored suit looked almost absurd against the backdrop of peach trees, yet he moved with ease, as if he belonged anywhere he decided to stand. Dust clung to his polished shoes, but he didn't seem to care. His eyes were fixed on Jade. She sighed, setting the basket down. "What are you doing here?" "I owed you a visit," he replied, his accent soft but clear. "And my mother insisted." Jade blinked. "Your mother?" "Yes," he said, stepping closer. "She won't stop talking about you. She says she feels safer just knowing you're nearby." That tugged at Jade's heart. She tried to hide her smile, busying herself by rearranging peaches in the basket. "I'm glad she's better, but you didn't have to come all the way out here." "I wanted to." His tone was simple, but there was weight behind it. "I wanted to see where you spend your days." She glanced at him then, curiosity flickering in her eyes. A billionaire in a fruit orchard, it almost felt like a story from a movie. He looked so out of place, and yet, when his gaze softened on her, it didn't feel strange at all. "You really don't give up, do you?" she teased. "Not when it matters," he answered smoothly. A silence stretched between them, warm and charged, until Jade finally broke it by lifting another basket. "Well, if you're going to hang around, you might as well make yourself useful." His brows arched. "You mean, pick fruit?" "Yes." She smirked, holding out an empty basket. "Or are you afraid of getting your hands dirty?" Hayun hesitated only a second before loosening his watch and setting it carefully aside. He took the basket from her and reached for the nearest branch. His first attempt sent 2 peaches tumbling into the dirt, and Jade burst into laughter, the sound bubbling freely into the air. "You're terrible at this," she grinned. "I'm learning," he said, chuckling despite himself. And so the billionaire CEO from Montgomery and the orchard girl from Alabama worked side by side as the evening light turned golden. Somewhere between clumsy hands and playful laughter, the distance between their 2 worlds grew smaller. By the time the last peach was picked, Jade found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, his presence wasn't as out of place here as she thought. The orchard had grown quiet, the evening air rich with the scent of ripened fruit. Crickets had just begun their song, a gentle hum weaving through the rows of trees. Jade carried her last basket toward the storage shed, but she noticed Hayun still fumbling with one more branch, determined to fill his. "You know," Jade called with a teasing smile, "you don't have to prove yourself to me. That peach tree is clearly winning." He shot her a playful look, brushing dust from his shirt sleeve. "I've closed billion-dollar deals, Jade. I refuse to be defeated by a piece of fruit." She laughed, full and unguarded, and the sound surprised even herself. It had been a long time since someone made her laugh like that, not out of politeness but out of genuine joy. By the time they finished, the sky had shifted into twilight. Fireflies blinked lazily across the field, tiny sparks dancing in the darkening air. Hayun set down his basket and glanced at Jade. His usually sharp features softened in the fading light. "You work hard," he said quietly. "Harder than most people I know." Jade shrugged. "That's life out here. Nothing comes easy, but it's honest." He studied her for a moment, as though the honesty in her words was something rare, something he'd been missing. "Let me walk you home," he said suddenly. Jade hesitated, then nodded. The path back to her house was only a few minutes through the orchard, shaded by tall pecan trees. They walked side by side, their steps unhurried, their conversation light, about Montgomery, about soul, about simple things like favorite foods and music. The differences between their worlds showed, but instead of clashing, They seemed to fold together like pieces of a puzzle neither of them had expected to fit. As they neared the small farmhouse, the porch light glowed warmly against the dark. An older man sat on the steps, his frame sturdy though lined with age. He rose as Jade approached. "Daddy," Jade called softly, smiling. "This is Hayun. He's the son of the woman I helped at the hospital." Her father's eyes, sharp and protective, flicked to the stranger standing beside his daughter. He took in the expensive clothes, the polished air of a man far from farm life. Hayun bowed slightly, respectful. "Sir, I wanted to thank you. Your daughter saved my mother's life." Jade's father studied him for a long moment before nodding. Any man would be grateful for that. But saving lives, that's just who Jade is. Jade lowered her eyes, embarrassed, but Hayun's gaze lingered on her, admiration plain. For a moment, silence hung between the three of them, broken only by the soft chirp of crickets. Then Jade's father cleared his throat. "Well, it's late. Jade, get washed up for supper. And you?" His eyes returned to Hayun, stern but not unkind. "You're welcome to join us if you're staying around." Hayun smiled faintly. "Thank you, sir. Maybe another time." He bid them good night and started back down the path, his figure fading into the orchard's twilight. But Jade remained on the porch a little longer, her heart unsteady, as if the evening had shifted something she couldn't yet name. A week had passed since the evening under the peach trees, but Jade's life hadn't felt the same. Work was still work, sun, sweat, and soil. But her thoughts often drifted to the man with the polished shoes who had fumbled peaches just to make her laugh. It was late afternoon when a sleek car rolled up the dirt road toward the orchard. Jade wiped her hands on her apron, surprised to see Madame Kim step out, elegant as ever despite her recent accident. A silk scarf draped over her shoulders, and her smile was gentle. "Jade," she called warmly, her Korean accent lacing every syllable. "Mrs. Kim." Jade rushed forward, genuinely glad to see her. "You shouldn't be out here after what happened. Are you feeling stronger?" "Because of you, yes." Madame Kim clasped her hands. "And because of you, I have been sleeping peacefully. That is why I came. I want you to visit us in Montgomery. My home is lonely without new faces. Please, come this weekend." Jade hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden invitation. A billionaire's home? That wasn't her world. Still, something in Madame Kim's eyes was so sincere, so motherly, that she couldn't say no. I'd be honored," Jade finally said. That Saturday, Jade stood in awe at the grand gates of the Kim estate in Montgomery. The mansion rose high with sweeping windows and marble steps that gleamed under the sunlight. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Her simple dress felt out of place as she clutched her small purse nervously. Madame Kim greeted her at the door with open arms. "You came. Welcome, Jade. You are like family now." But not everyone shared her warmth. From the staircase descended Hayun's younger sister, Hannah, stylish, sharp-eyed, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She looked Jade up and down slowly, her lips curving into a cool smile. "So this is the famous orchard girl," Hannah said, her tone edged with disdain. "I imagined someone different." Jade stiffened, taken aback. "Excuse me? You saved my mother, yes? And for that I suppose we're grateful. But don't get too comfortable here." Hannah's gaze swept over Jade's modest dress again. "This house isn't exactly for people who spend their lives picking fruit." The words cut like glass. Jade's cheeks burned, but she held her ground, lifting her chin. "I didn't come here for your house. I came because your mother invited me." Hannah arched a brow, unbothered. "Then remember that." Before Jade could respond, Madame Kim's voice rang sharp from the doorway. "Hannah! Enough!" Hannah only shrugged and swept past, her perfume lingering like smoke in the air. Silence hung heavy. Jade's chest tightened, her pride bruised. But before she could excuse herself, Madame Kim gently touched her arm. "Please forgive her," she said softly. "My daughter, she is protective. But her heart is not as cruel as her words." Jade forced a smile, though her throat ached. "It's fine, ma'am. I understand." But deep down, she wasn't sure she did. And when Hyun arrived home later that evening, he would walk into a storm he hadn't expected. One where loyalty, family, and love would soon be tested. The marble floor echoed with the sound of polished shoes as Hyun returned home that evening. He had been away in meetings all day, eager to finally relax, and, truthfully, to see if Jade had accepted his mother's invitation. The moment he stepped into the grand foyer, he sensed the heaviness in the air. Madame Kim stood with Jade in the sitting room, speaking softly, while Hannah lounged nearby with her arms crossed, wearing an expression that said she had already won whatever battle had been fought. "Jade," Hyun said with quiet surprise, his eyes lighting as he approached. "You came." But Jade's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her posture was stiff, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Hyun's gaze flicked between the three women, reading the room like a strategist in the boardroom. "What happened?" No one spoke at first. Then Hannah's cool voice broke the silence. "Nothing serious, Appa. Just a misunderstanding. But honestly," she cast a glance at Jade, her lips curving in mock sweetness, "she doesn't belong here. You know it, I know it." The words landed like stones in the quiet room. Hyun's jaw tightened. Slowly, he turned to his sister. "Hannah, don't." "Don't what?" Hannah challenged, standing now, her chin high. "Don't tell the truth? Look at her, Appa. She's kind, yes. Brave, yes. But she's not us. She doesn't fit into our world." Madame Kim's voice, sharp with disapproval, cut through. "Enough, Hannah. You will not insult someone who saved my life." But Jade's chest burned. She couldn't stand being the reason for such conflict. "It's okay, Mrs. Kim," she whispered. She turned toward Hyun, her eyes glistening, though she refused to let tears fall. "Maybe your sister is right. Maybe I don't belong here." And with that, Jade picked up her purse. "Thank you for inviting me. I should go." She moved toward the door, her steps quick, almost desperate. "Jade, wait!" Hyun called after her, striding across the room. He caught her just as she reached the door, his hand gentle but firm on her arm. "Don't leave because of her," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You belong here as much as anyone, more than most." Jade met his eyes, searching, torn between hurt and hope. "You don't have to defend me, Hyun. I'm not asking for anything." "I know you're not," he said softer now. "That's why I will." Behind them, Hannah let out a sharp scoff, but Madame Kim silenced her with a single look. The room seemed to hold its breath as Jade slowly pulled her arm free. "I need air," she whispered, and slipped out into the night. Hyun didn't hesitate. He followed her, the heavy mansion doors closing behind them with a thud. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the distant hum of city traffic. Jade stood on the steps, arms wrapped around herself. "You shouldn't have chased me," she said without turning. "I couldn't let you walk away like that," Hyun replied, stepping closer. "Not when you've already walked into my life in a way I can't ignore." For the first time that evening, Jade allowed herself a small, trembling smile. And in that quiet moment under the Alabama stars, something stronger than insult or pride began to take root between them. Something neither of them could easily walk away from. The heavy doors of the mansion closed behind Jade and Hyun, leaving Madame Kim and Hannah alone in the sitting room. Hannah's arms were crossed, her chin tilted proudly, but her mother's disappointment hung over her like a storm cloud. "Your father would be ashamed," Madame Kim said quietly, shaking her head. "The girl risked her life for me, and you repay her with cruelty?" Hannah bristled. "Iomioni, I was only protecting our family. You don't see it, but she doesn't belong." "Enough." Madame Kim's voice was sharp now. "You speak of belonging as though wealth defines it. It does not." Hannah bit her lip, anger flashing in her eyes. But before she could reply, footsteps echoed back through the hall. Hyun had returned, his expression carved with steel. "Hannah," he said firmly, "we need to talk." She lifted her chin. "If this is about that girl." "It is." His tone left no room for argument. You will not speak to her like that again. Her eyes widened. Appa, are you serious? She's just what? Hayun cut her off, stepping closer. Just the woman who saved our mother's life? Just the woman who had more courage and kindness in one moment than most people show in a lifetime? If that's just to you, then maybe you need to rethink what matters. Hannah's mouth opened, but no words came. He had never spoken to her with such firmness before. Hayun exhaled, softening slightly. I know you want to protect me, to protect us, but the way you treated Jade tonight, it was wrong. And if you can't see that now, I hope you will soon. Hannah's gaze flickered, torn between pride and the sting of truth. At last, she turned away, muttering under her breath. She'll never last in our world. Hayun's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. Instead, he left her in silence, his decision made. Episode 1 ends here. Thank you for watching. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next exciting episode. More amazing stories are on the way.